Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CEJA Technical Assistant session. My name is Linda Larson. I am with the University of Illinois Climate Jobs Institute, and we're here today to talk a little bit about two workforce programs and how to strengthen your applications for these two open funding opportunities. Just a few housekeeping items as we are getting started today. We are recording this session so that people can review it later. If you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat during the presentation, and we'll have a few minutes afterwards for questions and answers. And feel free to write questions as they come up in the chat, and then we can try to address them at the end. So today we're going to be focused on two CEJA workforce programs. And if you attended the last technical assistant session, we provided a little bit of information on these two sessions and details about the application process. The two programs are the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, commonly called the Workforce Hub program. The goal of this program is to provide training and support services to prepare people for entry-level clean energy jobs. The department already had an open notice of funding opportunity for this program and reviewed applications this fall. And they have selected several applicants for funding. They have recommended a few applicants for funding. There are still some hub areas that are accepting applications. These areas are Chicago South region, Waukegan, Joliet, Aurora, Peoria, Danville, Carbondale, and East St. Louis. And applicants that submit by February 23rd will be included in the second round of reviews. And likewise, the Energy Transition Navigators program has been open since this fall, and a first round of reviews has already been completed. Applicants have been selected for several hub regions, and there are other hub regions where no applicants were recommended for funding. The hub areas that are currently accepting applications for this program are Waukegan, Joliet, Aurora, Peoria, Danville, Champaign, Decatur, East St. Louis, and Alton. And applicants who submit their proposals by February 23rd will be reviewed in the second round. The purpose of these technical assistance sessions are to provide information to help you prepare a successful proposal. We're going to be basing our presentations on the applicant review criteria. So here you can see a little pie chart of the different review criteria that the merit reviewers look at when they're reviewing applications for the CEJA grants. 35% of the review score is based on applicant team qualifications and capacity. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about that section. And then 15% is based on cost effectiveness. And we'll be talking about budgets and cost effectiveness today. Next week, we'll be having an additional technical assistance session that will be focused on the project quality and integration aspects of the proposal, as well as documentation of need. I want to note that a lot of the content that I'm presenting at this webinar today is based on feedback from merit reviewers for the first round of proposal review. We met with the merit reviewers and asked them what were some of the strengths and weaknesses of the proposals and ways that applicants could improve their proposals to have a more successful outcome. So they provided a number of helpful tips, and we have developed these resources to help applicants improve their applications. So today, in short, we're going to be focusing on 3 areas. The first is that application team qualifications and capacity section. We'll be talking about what reviewers are looking for, what effective partnerships look like. We'll be going over what a memorandum of understanding is, and then finally addressing some common questions that applicants have had about qualifications and capacity. Likewise, we'll be taking a look at cost effectiveness and budget, which is worth 15% of the total points for merit review. We'll be covering what reviewers are looking for. We'll be providing budget template and budget narrative tips, and then also addressing some commonly asked questions that are related to budget. And then finally, I'll be sharing some resources that applicants can take advantage of, and additional technical assistance sessions that you can attend. So we'll be starting today with team qualifications, what reviewers are looking for. This little screenshot is taken from the Notice of Funding Opportunity document. And as you can see here, 35% of the merit review criteria is based on applicant team qualifications and capacity. And I've highlighted here some of those keywords that we're going to be looking at. You can see qualifications and capacity are mentioned a couple times, experience and qualifications, experience and ability, experience and qualifications. So really what we're going to be talking about today is how you can successfully demonstrate your qualifications and capacity to deliver these grants. So what are reviewers looking for when we say we're looking at your experience and your qualifications and your capacity or ability to deliver the grant? What are we looking for? For experience, in general, we're looking at the answers that you have to the questions about your team's overall experience. And you'll see that there are questions related to project administration. What experience do you have administering similar programs or projects? What experience does your team have with training, with job readiness, with skill development? Your experience and qualifications related to clean energy business partnerships, as well as delivering barrier reduction services. And then finally, we're interested in seeing the qualifications of key staff. So you are invited in the application to submit resumes and bios of key staff. We want to see that the key staff have the experience to deliver these services that the grant calls for. Experience and qualifications is a bit different from capacity and ability. When we say we're looking for your capacity, we're looking at your staffing plan. Who is doing what? Do you have a plan to hire everyone you need for your project? Do you have clear roles and responsibilities outlined for your team, for your staff, and for your partner organizations? And we'll be looking a little bit at that. And the areas we're focusing on, again, were areas that were a little bit weak in some of the applications we received. So we're providing this guidance to help organizations strengthen their proposals moving forward. So what sections of the application package are we looking at to assess qualifications and capacity? Primarily, we're looking at that technical volume, that long 20-page proposal document that you put together. This has information about your applicant team, the organizations that make up that team, and their qualifications. We're looking at the staffing plan attachment. We're looking at resumes of key staff. And if you don't have those key staff identified, then you can always submit job descriptions for new hires. And then finally, memorandums of understanding. Most applicants are partnering with other organizations to apply for these funding opportunities. So we want to see that you have memorandums of understanding for those partner organizations. So thinking again about experience, qualifications, and capacity, essentially what we want to see is, do you have the capacity to collectively deliver all the program elements? And you can see the program elements listed here, the main tasks that are required. And these are the tasks for the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program. There's slightly different tasks for the Energy Transition Navigator program, but we're using here the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program as an example. We also want to see that you have experience and qualifications related to these tasks to know that you'll be able to deliver all of the program elements successfully. So I've shared this table before at some of my technical assistance sessions, but this is a good tool to use to kind of build your team. Think about what your needs are, what your own capacity is in your organization, and then identify some potential partners. So here on the left, I've listed some of those main tasks. This is again for the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program. It may look a little bit different for the Energy Transition Navigator program. So as you go through the main tasks, what is your organization's capacity? Do you have some of these items covered? Do you need some help? Do you need to hire some people in your own organization, or do you need to partner with an organization to cover these different program elements? So I recommend that if you're just getting started, or if you want to improve your application, make a list of everything that's that the grant is requiring, and make a list of who is providing what, and perhaps some potential organizations you could reach out to provide these different program elements. When we're looking at the staffing plan and your capacity to deliver these program elements, I recommend that you think about the big picture first. Too often, applicants will maybe start with those new hires and roles and individual roles that individuals will play, instead of looking at the roles that their partner organizations will play. So what are the roles of the main applicant organization and those partner organizations in delivering the program elements? You might consider creating an org chart where you list the main applicants and their roles and responsibilities, and then each partner, what are their roles and responsibilities? How are they going to communicate and work together to deliver the different program elements? And after you have that high-level organization, the staffing plan does require you to identify specific people that will fill specific staff roles. And these in general also align with those main program elements. So the staff that are listed here are essentially going to be your leadership team, the main people, the coordinators who are going to be providing all of these services. You may have additional staff that you hire in addition to these key staff, but these are going to be the main hires that we want to see. Now, we know that it's unlikely that you'll have everyone hired for the project. We are hoping that you will have a few people, as many people as you can, identified from your team already. Who are those qualified members of your team that can refocus their efforts to focus on this particular program? I want to note that if you have too many new hires or need to be filled by new hires positions, that can be a little bit of a red flag. Although it's understandable that you would have a new hire, that you would need to hire new people, we want to see that you have a plan for new hires. So do provide job descriptions in your list of resumes, and in your staffing plan, explain how you plan to hire them. What's your timeline for these new hires? We want to see that you will be able to start the program as soon as possible and get your team put together. Another red flag that we sometimes see is that no resumes are provided for key staff, and that doesn't allow us to evaluate their qualifications. So we want to see that the people who are going to be playing these key roles, that they have the qualifications and experience needed. So please remember to add resumes of key staff, but don't overdo it. We've had a few applications where they submit resumes for of the whole organization. We don't need to see all of those resumes. We want to see the resumes of your key staff members. The next thing that is really important to help us understand your capacity and your qualifications of your entire project team is to help us understand what your partner organizations are going to do. And the way you do this is through memorandums of understanding. Many of the applicants did not have memorandums of understanding for key partners, and this took away some of the points if they didn't have those memorandums of understanding set up. A memorandum of understanding really sets the stage for effective partnership relationships. They address agreed upon outcomes and goals. What are the goals of your project? What are those tasks and responsibilities that your partners are going to be responsible for? What is their budget? What are the main budget items for this partner? What's the agreed upon timeline for service delivery? And then even more detailed, what's your plan for communicating across your program partners? What's your plan for ensuring that performance metrics are met and that reporting that you comply with reporting requirements? And then do you have a plan to train and onboard and provide professional development for your partners? So this memorandum of understanding is really where you can give the department confidence that your team is ready to work together, that you have a good understanding of what each partner is going to do, and you have a plan for working together. So we have provided a template that you can use to develop a memorandum of understanding. And this is a formal commitment document that you will be requesting from your partners. These are the main sections that are generally included in a memorandum of understanding, and we encourage you to use the template that we've provided. I have a link to it here, and you can also find it on the Notice of Funding Opportunity webpage under Resources. But in general, here you can see it's a formal document that outlines the terms of understanding between the main applicant and the partner organization. So you'll provide a little bit of background on the relationship and why it's important for you to work together. You'll explain the purpose and intent of the partnership. You'll provide details on the scope of work and the responsibilities. You'll explain reporting requirements, how progress in your program will be monitored and how data will be shared. You're going to explain how you'll be coordinating together. And then finally, the funding section asks you to provide a breakdown of budget items. If you're requesting, if a particular partner is requesting $100,000, for instance, we want to know what those budget items are under that amount. And then finally, since this is a formal agreement, this requires signatures from authorized officials in each organization to be effective. So moving on, I wanted to answer a few questions that we've had about the application team and qualifications that are related to what we've talked about. The most common question that we receive is, How do I find partners? So if you have attended some of our other technical assistance sessions, you'll know that we've developed a contact list of potential partners that you can reach out to. They are organized by region. It is quite long. There's different tabs for training providers, for community-based organizations, and for clean energy employers in your region. So that is one way to find potential partners. The department has been hosting networking events. There's a few that will be held next week, and I'll provide information about those networking events a little bit later on in the presentation. But those are also good opportunities to find potential partners. And then finally, if you want to reach out to your CEJA regional administrator, that's also a great place to go to network and to think about the potential training providers and community-based organizations in your area that you could partner with to deliver these programs. Another question that we often get, and I addressed this a little bit earlier, but we get asked the question, do all the positions need to be filled or can they be hired afterwards? And I hope I've made it clear that you can hire afterwards, but make sure that your staffing plan and budget reflect the intended roles to be filled by new hires. Beware that too many new hired positions without a plan associated with hiring those positions is not going to look good. So make sure that you have a plan and timeline for hiring new staff, and that you include job descriptions in lieu of resumes if you are going to be hiring new staff. Another question that we've gotten a lot is in the applicant team, who is held responsible for meeting requirements? So we know that when you're considering partnerships, you want to know what's the main responsibility of the main applicant versus the partners. So in these grants, both programs, both the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program and the Energy Transition Navigator program, the lead applicant or the lead grantee is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the program is delivered as intended and that sub-grantees meet their requirements. The department enters an agreement with that lead applicant to deliver the program, and then that lead grantee or applicant is responsible for making sure that the partners deliver are meeting their requirements. And this is really why it's so important to have a strong memorandum of understanding with clear roles, responsibilities, reporting requirements and budgets, so that your partners have an understanding of what they're going to need to do, and so that the main grantee knows how they're going to be monitoring those partners to ensure that that they meet their requirements. The main grantee is also responsible for dispersing funds to sub-grantees, to the partner organizations. So again, DCEO will enter an agreement with that main grantee organization, and then that grantee organization will be responsible for dispersing funds to any partner organizations. Another question that we've had a lot is, do the partners need to meet the same eligibility requirements as the lead applicant? If you're getting into details about eligibility for both of those programs, it will say the applicant, to be eligible, the applicant needs to meet these criteria. And these are the criteria that the lead applicant will need to meet. These eligibility criteria: they need to have at least one main operating office in the hub region. They need to be GATA pre-qualified. They need to be, for the Workforce Network program, they need to be a community-based organization, and look carefully at the definition for that. Or for the Energy Transition Navigator program, it's a community-based provider, and I'd encourage you to look carefully at the definition for that. They are the ones that will need to submit and sign the conflict of interest and mandatory disclosure forms. the partner organizations do not need to meet those eligibility criteria. However, the applicant team as a whole should have the qualifications and experience to deliver the grant. So we want to see that the organizations that you're partnering with are helping your team round out your ability and your experience to deliver the program. The other question that we get frequently is who should complete a memorandum of understanding? So we are expecting to see that any partners on your grant, any sub-grantees or sub-recipients have a memorandum of understanding. It's also helpful to have memorandums of understanding from employers or organizations that agree to offer work-based learning elements to support your program. So if you're able to, that will strengthen your proposal a lot to have those memorandums of understanding from employers as well. Next, I'm going to move on to budget effectiveness, cost effectiveness, and budget tips. And again, as you have questions, please enter them into the chat. We'll return to those questions, and I'm happy to address them at the end of the presentation today. So the budget is, the cost effectiveness and budget is worth 15% of your merit review points. You can see here, this is again from the Notice of Funding Opportunity, a screenshot of what we're looking for. I've highlighted some of those main key terms that we're looking at: cost efficiency and effectiveness of planned activities and projected outcomes. What does that mean? We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then some of the more tricky parts of putting together a budget, and again, also some of the weaknesses that we have seen in people's budgets in previous applications. So when we say cost efficiency and effectiveness, this is a bit vague. So I thought I asked the merit reviewers, what are they really looking for when they say cost efficiency and effectiveness? And they responded with some of these questions. They want to see if you're providing enough detail on the cost items. So do you just provide general costs, but don't spell out the specific items that you're asking for? Do you explain how the costs were calculated? Do you show your work? Do you explain why costs are reasonable and necessary for the project? So if you're requesting something that may be a little bit out of the ordinary, do you explain why you need it? Is there an analysis of the cost efficiency and related to planned outcomes and activities? So thinking about the number of people you are serving and the outcomes that you are proposing, is this a reasonable estimate? Is this a reasonable cost per participant for what you're proposing? So the merit reviewers are going to take a look at two basic sections of your application practice, your application package to evaluate your cost effectiveness. The first is that large budget template spreadsheet. We'll talk a little bit about that. That includes an itemized budget numbers for various sections of your budget. Plus there are sections where you'll be explaining, you'll be providing a narrative of your budget items. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then the technical volume, that 20-page document that you're submitting, that also contains a budget narrative. This is your chance to justify the main budget expense items, to analyze their cost effectiveness, to provide details of subcontractor or partner budgets, and then to show how other programs, services, and partnerships will be leveraged to improve cost effectiveness. This is not a grant where you're required to have cost sharing, but it can help to show that you are working with other programs and services and partners to make sure that these programs run effectively and are cost effective. So a few things to know about the budget template when you're putting together that Excel spreadsheet. It can be a lot of work, especially if you haven't done it before. I strongly encourage you, if you're new at this, to reach out for help. You can contact our technical assistants, our technical assistance coaches. We're happy to provide help. DCEO has some help and resources for that as well. So that would be my main piece of advice. Reach out for help if you're struggling to put together the budget. This is a standard template that's used across many different grant programs. So you may be scratching your head at a few of the sections because you're not sure how this applies to your particular grant. That's okay. Some sections may not apply to you. Just keep in mind that this is something that's used throughout the department. If you are selected, DCEO will likely negotiate the budget with you. So if there's items that you're not sure if they're allowed or not, you can add them, and the department may negotiate that afterwards. This is common. Just be prepared for that. That's a large part of the grant negotiation process, is taking a closer look at that budget and refining it. And then finally, this was a big issue for many of the applicants that we reviewed. Don't forget the budget narrative. The numbers only tell part of the story. So it's not enough to just put together the budget template. Your narrative is really going to explain your budget and provide justification for why what you're requesting is necessary. So I just put together a few slides on starting points, budget starting points, like when you're starting to put together your, how much is this going to cost? What are some things that you should be considering? You might want to take a look at tasks, timing, and staff. So here I've listed some of the main tasks associated with that Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, thinking about timing, how long for let's say one cohort of participants, how long are those tasks going to take, and who's going to do it? So just putting together some general ideas will help you think about costs. You'll also want to consider the number of participants, the number of cohorts, and in some cases, multiple locations. So if you're proposing to offer your training program in multiple locations, what's that going to look like at each location, and how many staff are required? A big part of your budget is going to be that personnel, those staff needed for your program. Your staffing plan can also be a good starting point for identifying, especially those personnel needs. So not only who are your key staff, but who are the support staff for each of these different program areas. So these are the general budget categories for the template. So you can see there's a lot of them. There's a different spreadsheet tab for all of these, and you'll need to fill out all of them and list budget items for these different sections. You may not utilize all of these tabs depending on your program and what you are proposing, but you'll want to take a look through all of these categories and figure out where you're going to put different cost items into these categories. One of the biggest weaknesses that we found in proposals when we were reviewing is in the budget narrative. And part of this is because the budget narrative instructions are pretty vague. So we wanted to provide a little bit more detail on what we're asking for in the budget narrative and where you should be putting that content. So the first thing I wanted to note is that there are narrative sections in the spreadsheet. So there's the numbers in the spreadsheet, and then below those numbers, that itemized budget list, there's there's a narrative section where we expect you to provide some details on the items that you're proposing, explain why they are necessary, explain any calculations. We'll talk a little bit about what the narrative can include in a minute, but I want to note that it's important to include those sections in your spreadsheet. And then finally, in the technical volume, there is a standalone budget narrative that you will have to create. This is essentially going to be a combination of the different narrative sections in the budget spreadsheet that'll be summarized. Here is where you can put budget narratives for your partner budgets. So if you have 3 different partner organizations that you are working with, can you provide details about the different line items in their budgets, not just your main organization budget? And then finally, an important part of the technical volume budget narrative is an overall justification of program costs by outcome and activities. So taking a look at all of your activities, how much do these how much of the total program cost can be attributed to each task, or how much is the total program cost per participant? Those are 2 different ways of looking at it. So can you justify the program by your outcome, by the number of people you're serving, as well as by your activities? This is how much it costs to do all this work. So some of this I've been over a little bit already, but the budget narrative, what should it include? Essentially written justification for all your main item costs. This is an opportunity to show your work, in some cases to explain how you got your numbers. This is an opportunity to explain any assumptions you used to develop the budget. Provide a detailed explanation of your more substantial costs, and then finally to describe your partner's budgets. This budget template is really for the main applicant, but you'll also be including details about those partners' budgets in your budget narrative. So a few tips of ways that you can be successful in your budget narrative. Be specific but concise. I know that's a bit of an oxymoron there, but we want you to offer details when they're helpful, but don't provide too much detail for smaller expenses. We'd like you to cite your calculations for accuracy, for justification of costs and accuracy. If you're requesting funding for equipment, you might include quotes or invoices. You might, and then we recommend that your narrative follow the same order as your budget spreadsheet. So the narrative and your budget spreadsheet should match. So make sure the numbers and the order matched from your budget spreadsheet to your narrative. So here's a few examples of things that you could discuss in your budget narrative. So for personnel, in describing costs, you might list the personnel and their positions and how the costs are necessary and reasonable. So why is it necessary to hire X number of people for outreach or for training, or how were the costs, how were the salaries or hourly wages calculated? How long are they going to be serving this particular project? Are they only necessary? Are certain staff only going to be involved for certain months during, for instance, the recruitment section, or are they going to be on staff during the entire project? So those are the kinds of things that you could share in that personnel section to help us better understand the personnel costs. So consultants or contractors, this is where you're going to put some of those partner budgets. So we want you to explain who is being subcontracted, or who's the subrecipient, what's their scope of work, why you need their expertise or their services. With equipment, we want, it's helpful if you can identify pricing or quotes and explain how the equipment will be used. For travel, what's the basis of the costs? Why is the travel relevant? How many people? How long? And I know it's hard to come up with all of this detail up front. The more detail you can provide, the better in helping us understand why these costs are necessary for your project. So this is just a chart we developed to show some of those things that you might include for a couple of these sections. So personnel, what are the main items? How are costs calculated? Why are they necessary and reasonable? And then, moving on to the different sections. What are the items? How are they calculated? Why are they necessary and reasonable? Those are the main questions that need to be asked for the different sections of your budget narrative. And then again, a quick reminder, make sure that you don't say, okay, X partner is going to get $250,000 and then provide no details about what they're going to be spending that money on. So we want to see some detailed partner budgets as well. What are the main budget items and categories? Are they mostly providing personnel? Are they also going to be covering some supplies or equipment or other costs? And that'll help strengthen your proposal and also provide information for your partner organizations about the costs that the budgets that they will be receiving for the project. Want to note that the department has developed a few budget and grant resources. So especially if you're new at putting together budgets for your organization, there's some videos and helpful fact sheets and resources that you can go to that we've linked here for understanding some of the different budget items. And I'd encourage you to take a look at that. So we also went through our frequently asked questions. We went through questions that were asked at technical assistance sessions for the last round of funding to kind of see what people were confused about. And I thought we would go over some of those questions and answers today as well. One of the most common questions we got was about performance-based payment. And if you've read the notice of funding opportunity, the Workforce Hub program does have a performance-based payment model, and I'll talk about shortly what that means. The department has, since putting out this notice of funding opportunity, the department has determined that year one will be a benchmarking year with payments allocated based on services rendered. So that is the performance-based payment for the Workforce Hub program will not be utilized the first year, but it will be utilized years 2 and 3. And I'll share a little bit what that means. So this is a slide from our past technical assistance session to kind of show what the performance-based payment model looks like. Basically, performance-based payment means that you're paid based on your actual outcomes. So your performance-based outcomes. So you 25% of your funding is based on the number of enrollments that you have in your program. 35 is based on transition outcomes, which is job placements or additional training program placements. 30% is based on the completion metrics. So how many participants actually complete your program, and then you get paid based on the numbers of completions, and then 10% are based on closeout reports. So the department will be utilizing this performance-based payment only the second and third years of the grant. The first year we're going to be having what we're calling a benchmarking year, where payments will be provided for services rendered. And the purpose of this benchmarking year is to set reasonable performance outcomes. This is a brand new program. So we want to make sure that our performance goals are reasonable. And so we'll be using this first year to establish that. Grantees will work with grant managers to establish reasonable year one goals. These will include startup goals and milestones, enrollment goals, completion goals, and transition goals. Your payment will not be based on those goals for year one, but your performance in achieving these goals will impact renewal for years 2 and 3. And then year 2 and beyond will utilize that performance-based payment. And again, the reason why the department is using performance-based payment is based on that belief that funding should be allocated based on an organization's measurable impact based on their actual performance in achieving their outcomes rather than their ability to deliver services. So grantees will be reimbursed on a per participant basis according to their reported progress as they meet their outcomes and goals. And we hope that having this benchmarking year will provide a little bit of cushion for applicant organizations and give them some confidence that the first year that they can set reasonable performance goals for the following years. Want to note that the Energy Transition Navigator program will not use a performance-based payment model. And we also received a lot of questions about upfront funding. We know that many organizations will need to hire people to get started, may need to purchase equipment. The department is willing to provide up to 20% of the total annual grant amount upfront. This can be negotiated at the time of grant negotiation and contract signing. So just want to note that for people who are worried about having that money to get their program started. And then finally, the last performance-based payment question I have is, for workforce hubs, are all program costs subject to the performance-based payment model? And the answer to that question is no. Training program costs are, but barrier reduction services are not. Again, we feel like barrier reduction services should be paid based on services rendered rather than outcomes. So those services, wraparound support service staff, wraparound support costs, transition service costs, those are going to be based on, are not based on the performance of the grantees. We addressed this a little bit earlier, but just a quick reminder that funds generally are going to be dispersed to the main grantee from the department, and then the main grantee will be dispersing the funds to their partners. We receive a lot of questions about allowable costs, and often we have to take these questions to the department and discuss them and get back to the grantees. Our question and answer has a number of these types of questions. I just wanted to put a few up there that we received several times of allowable and not allowable costs. So in general, costs that are associated with delivering the program are allowed. So what are those construction materials and equipment that are associated with training, with your work-based learning opportunities and training? Those are allowable costs. Program-related tools, workwear, equipment, and training materials, those are allowable costs. If you need costs to train up your instructors, make sure that they have the certifications necessary to provide the training, those are allowable costs. The program should be free to participants. So if you're working with a community college that requires tuition payments, then tuition expenses can be a covered program cost. traveling expenses for staff and participants to go to professional development or to attend um, field trips. Those can all be allowable costs as well. So what are some things that aren't allowed? And these are things that we've discussed with the department. So large ticket construction materials and equipment that's associated with work-based learning opportunities, such as the costs associated with building a Habitat for Humanity home. You could easily blow almost your entire budget on a large scale construction project. So that is not allowed. We would encourage you to find other funding sources if you are proposing something like that. It's a great idea, but these large ticket construction items are not allowable costs. Likewise, it's going to be hard to justify the purchase of an electric vehicle for EV training. Again, we want the funds to go as much as possible to the participants and to providing the training. This is another case where it's helpful if you can find partners, industry partners, to provide the equipment if possible, to partner with you. And then finally, capital expenses such as building or renovating training facilities, those are also not allowed. The expenses need to be project related, they need to be related to your training program, and they cannot be capital expenses. We had a number of questions about the budget template spreadsheet. I'm not going to go over these, but if you do have questions about the budget spreadsheet and where you should put specific budget items, you can reach out to us and we'll try to answer your question, or we can have a technical assistance session to walk through the different items in your budget. So please reach out to us if you have specific questions and need more detailed assistance with your budget template. And related to that, I just wanted to remind you that we do have additional technical assistance that is available if you are applying for funding for one of these programs. I would encourage you to take advantage of our technical assistance, our one-on-one technical assistance. You can sign up using this QR code, and we'll have a CEJA NOFO coach reach out to you. You can sign up for multiple TA sessions if needed. And the purpose of these sessions is to, we can provide guidance on allowable costs. We can provide guidance on what needs to be included in your application, whether what you're proposing aligns with the actual NOFO requirements. We can take a look at drafts of your proposal and make sure that you have the elements that you need. We can take a look at, if you submitted a proposal before, we're happy to take a look at the recommendations of reviewers and help you improve your application if you would like to resubmit. So please do reach out to us and we'll schedule a session with you. If you did apply before, you can get feedback from merit reviewers. Please contact Shar Flickinger to set up a meeting. She can provide a summary of reviewer comments, and I know several organizations have reached out already. Please contact her. And then finally, we'll be providing one more technical assistance webinar. We're calling this one Rolling Back the Curtain, What CEJA Grant Reviewers Are Looking For. It's similar to this, except that it will be focused on developing that project plan and documentation of needs sections of your proposal. So would encourage you to attend. We'll be recording that session as well. If you missed some of our previous sessions, the recordings are linked on the NOFO application pages, and we encourage you to take a look at those. And then finally, especially if you are looking for partners for your application, we held some CEJA networking events this last week, and we have a few more next week. So if you're in Aurora, Alton, Decatur, or Danville, this would be a great opportunity for you to meet with your CEJA regional administrator and with other organizations that are considering applying. Build, strengthen partnerships, ask questions, get some advice from the CEJA regional administrator, and strengthen your proposal. And we've provided the link there for registering for those events. And then finally, we do maintain a question and answer page for each of these programs. Some of the content that I presented today comes directly from those questions that we received. So I'd encourage you to go to the question and answer document. We'll share a link in the chat. If you do have additional questions that are not answered, in the Q&A, please send those questions to ceo.ceja@illinois.gov. We review those questions on a weekly basis with the team at DCEO and then update the question and answer pages for applicants. So again, if you do have a question, take a look. It's likely that the question has been asked before. And if not, send us an email and we're happy to answer that question for you. All right, that is the end of my presentation.